Coming up on School Matters, we're letting you ask the superintendent. We're sitting down for a one-on-one interview with Dr. Nikolai Vitti, bringing him your questions and getting you answers.
And as a former principal and teacher, I know that it's important for teachers to work with one another.
Watch as Dr. Vitti addresses key issues and prepares us for next school year. You don't want to miss this exclusive interview. School Matters starts now with Vicki Pierre and Dr. Nikolai Vitti.
Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. In my hand, these are questions coming straight from our viewers, the community. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So first of all, I'm sure you're aware there was a recent article highlighting some issues as far as retaining teachers and specifically novice teachers and also the minority population. So what's your take on that?
Well, my take on it is that we can do much better with not only recruiting our best teachers, but making sure that our best teachers stay. And the research is clear on why teachers leave and why teachers stay, and I think anecdotally, from my own experience, it affirms what the research says, which is that teachers stay. Let's talk about why teachers stay. Teachers stay when they feel connected to their principal, when they feel empowered by their leader, and they feel empowered to be creative and to think out of the box when they engage their children. And I think a lot of our teachers feel stifled by the emphasis of the FCAT on standardized testing, and I would say standardized teaching. And we're hoping to address that going into next year. We have new curriculum guides that we're writing that are written by teachers. They will allow for clarity on the standard and how to teach the standard. We will recommend materials to be used, but at the end of the day, we are letting teachers teach with giving them a guide, with emphasizing the standard and emphasizing authentic instruction and engagement. I also think that the issue of discipline is important, that a lot of our teachers need more assistance from the district and schools with dealing with students that are continually misbehaving. I think we have to do a better job of reaching out to parents to be more involved. That's why we've talked about the Parent Academy and spreading that district-wide. And I think part of the issue also is pay. And we are looking into 13-14 and giving all teachers a step. And then obviously with the additional allocation that was provided by the governor and the legislature, we're hoping to give teachers a bonus. I don't think it's anything near what teachers deserve regarding the challenges that they face every day, but it will be an increase from what they've received in the past.
All right, so lots of potential positive changes. And speaking of changes, a lot of people are asking about what's happening next school year. And there are a lot of new initiatives affecting how budget priorities are at the school and at the district level. So what can you tell us about that?
Well, we've made no assumptions going into this budget process other than making sure that our budget is aligned to our strategic plan. Every division budget at the district level has gone through a zero-based budgeting process to make sure that every penny we spend is directly aligned to the strategic plan. It's been a difficult process in asking questions. It's been a difficult process questioning sacred cows often. But I do believe that moving into 13-14 will be much more efficient, and in a very itemized way we'll know exactly how we're spending our dollars. Now that's at the district level. At the school level, we've moved to a school allocation plan model for the first time in the district, and it has created a lot of questions, a lot of angst. But what we've tried to do is be much more equitable and efficient with the distribution of resources at the school level. To say that the amount of resources a school receives should be based on the number of students that they have. And so that we have equitable distribution of assistant principals, of teachers in general, of music and art teachers. And so that we don't have one school with so much more than another school. And then prioritizing certain positions such as music and art teachers, dean of discipline positions, in-school suspension teachers. But bottom line is a more equitable distribution of resources so that we can ensure that more of our resources are used to pay for teachers and the number of teachers to lower class size while still being able to offer the elective classes that our students deserve.
And so we're talking about personnel right now, lots of changes again, as you've mentioned. Talk to us about regional chiefs.
So in 12-13 and previously, the region was called the cluster. First of all, we had to change the name, not the best way to, I think, market your district with the term cluster. And clusters were divided by elementary, middle, and high school. And the regions will be configured by feeder pattern. And the strategy is to make sure that we have better alignment from what's happening at the elementary, middle, and high school level with our programs, continuity of curriculum, continuity of intervention, continuity of personnel, and making sure that when our students start with us at the elementary level, that they feed into our middle and high school level. So the area chiefs are 4 individuals who I believe are outstanding instructional leaders. They understand good teaching and learning, and their primary focus will be to build the capacity of our principals, our assistant principals, make sure that we're thinking about building a bench and a next generation of leaders, and also strengthening the connection by feeder pattern of our schools, and then lastly, engaging our community, our parents on issues that are not resolved at the school level that need someone to focus on beyond the school level.
And you just mentioned principals. What can you tell us about principal assignments?
So principal assignments, we did have, last night obviously we had a board meeting. What we did is in reconfiguring the cluster model and the selection of 4 new region chiefs, former region chiefs, former cluster chiefs, and then the executive directors that worked with those cluster chiefs were moved back to principal positions. These individuals were outstanding principals in the past. They have excellent track records. That's why they were promoted earlier on. But now with the new vision and reorganization of the district, trying to limit district level positions, the opportunity is to put some former principals who have a strong track record in our most fragile schools. So that made up the majority of principal changes that have already happened. The final round of principal changes will happen July 2nd, and those changes will mainly be based on data. So looking at this year's performance, but also looking at prior years of performance and seeing how long that principal is at the school, recognizing that the accountability requirements have shifted, but we do want to make sure that our schools are being led by an instructional leader and someone that is consistently moving the needle. And so decisions will be based on current data, longitudinal data, and then just looking at surveys, teacher surveys, looking at parent surveys, and making sure that we have the best leader at every one of our schools.
And then finally, what about assistant principal expansion?
Well, the expansion comes at the elementary level. Most of our elementary schools have been functioning without an assistant principal, and that goes back to the strategy of making sure that we're more equitable with the distribution of resources. But for the first time, our principals are being able to select any assistant principal they want. So historically, either the cluster office or the district has placed assistant principals at schools or highly recommended or told principals who their assistant principal should be. I have been one to consistently say that leaders need to be empowered to surround themselves and build a team that reflects their vision and helps them implement that vision. And to do that, you have to have the right assistant principal. You have to have someone who believes in your vision, fills gaps that exist at your school. And so we've already gone through a process of allowing principals to select their assistant principals. Those assistant principals that were not selected are going into a surplus pool, which they can interview for other openings at other schools that the principal has not selected someone. After those surplus assistant principals are interviewed, it'll open the door for new assistant principals that have recently been certified and gone through our preparation program. That process will be completed by the end of June.
Okay. And I know, speaking of other positions now, I know there's some confusion about media specialists. What is the plan now for media specialists inside of our schools?
As we've gone through different iterations, as we have had to make different and difficult and different decisions regarding the budget, in talking to principals and looking at the big picture, we are keeping the allocation plan the same for media specialists as it was in 12-13. Now, I think the perception or some of the misinformation in the field is that we're cutting media specialists, that there have been budget cuts. There have been no budget cuts proposed for 13-14. Instead, We are, like we did in 12-13, funding media specialists at elementary schools at 0.5. That's called half of a position. And at the middle school and high school, there isn't a direct allocation for media specialists. Through the different iterations of the budget, we have now allowed principals to have complete flexibility in deciding to convert a teacher position to a media specialist position. That's at the middle school and high school level, and at the elementary level, they can convert 0.5 or half of a basic teacher to fund a full media specialist, and then convert the 0.5 to do something else. So, bottom line, the allocation plan for the media specialist has not changed as it was in 12-13. And the decision to have a media specialist or not is solely placed on the principal, who has the flexibility to make that decision based on the reality and needs of that school, looking at the big picture at the school. I felt principals were in a better position to make that decision than I was as superintendent.
Okay. Another kind of hot topic I guess we've seen recently is the gifted program. What are the plans for the gifted program, and is it really going away? Because some parents are saying that.
No, again, a lot of misinformation. Originally, we talked about the concept of allowing many of our gifted students go to a school where there are a few gifted students. So in order to continue to provide them gifted services, we provide transportation once a week for them to go to a school that has a high number of gifted students, and so that they're serviced through gifted at another school once a week. We had proposed possibly building programs within homeschools, so that students wouldn't have to get on a bus and go to another school in order to be provided gifted services. In talking to parents and teachers, it was clear that there was a lot of angst and a lot of concern with reforming that policy. So we are keeping everything intact. No changes regarding gifted services across our district, and then continuing to provide the one-day transportation to a school where gifted students from schools that are not in the majority or they're isolated will continue to go to that one school, same school that they went to last year. Transportation still being provided so that they can receive gifted services. So bottom line, no changes to gifted services for 13-14. Everything will be the same as it was in 12-13.
And then another area, exceptional student education. How will that change?
No changes. If you compare 12-13 to 13-14, there will be no changes regarding EBD units. They will still be at their hubs. We're not moving them to home schools. In addition, the plan to place students in inclusion or in co-teaching models, that has all stayed the same. What will be different next year is that I believe that the customer service will improve regarding outreach to parents. I think IEPs will be processed much quicker. And teachers in schools that are working with ESC students will see a greater degree of direct support from the district instructionally to work with those students that are struggling than we've ever seen before. But from a programmatic level, for individual students, nothing will change.
You mentioned this earlier, art, music, and PE being important. How will we see that emphasis in the coming school year?
Well, the emphasis will be, starting at the elementary level, a clear teacher allocation for a music teacher, an art teacher, and I'll add a physical education teacher, although that's not music and art. I do think that's about developing the whole child. Many of our elementary schools right now do not have a full-time music and a full-time art teacher. They have what we call itinerant teachers, where those teachers roam among schools and provide services in art and music. Now they'll have a full-time teacher there to offer a full program for students starting in pre-K all the way to 5th grade. In the past also, students that were below grade level were pulled out of music and art classes in order to be provided academic remediation in reading and math. That will not happen any longer. So even if you're a student that is lower performing, you still have access to music and art. At the middle school level, we are fully funding an art or a music teacher. at each and every middle school. Now, principals have the discretion to either buy one art teacher and one music, or two music and two art, depending on the program that they're developing or retaining. And then we'll continue to fund our music and art programs as we have in the past at the high school level, including our dedicated magnets, DA and La Villa.
Don't change that channel. We'll be right back with more of our exclusive Sit Down with Dr. Vitti. You're watching School Matters, winner of the 2013 Sunshine Medallion for Broadcast Television.
Success doesn't happen overnight.
You think we were handed a trophy?
We earned it
9 times.
9 times. You want it bad enough?
Go get it.
Go get it.
Undefeated state champions.
Being a champ takes hard work.
It begins with educational excellence.
For every one of us.
Every one of us.
On the court,
In the classroom.
year-round,
All day.
Every day.
every day.
Every day.
Every day.
Keep your head in the game.
Welcome back to this special edition of School Matters. We're asking Dr. Vitti your questions. Here's Vicki Pierre.
We're seeing a lot of new positions in the district as part of your greater plan. Dean of Students, and then the in-school suspension program. So tell us about the need and the purpose for those positions.
Well, there has been a concern about safety. So obviously we have our SROs, which are officers in each of our high schools and our middle schools and our K-8s. But I think we can do more. And one thing that we're doing is ensuring that every school has a security guard. This is not an armed officer. This is just someone to focus on safety issues regarding discipline, but also ensuring that parents are greeted, that parents have a pass, that visitors have a pass, and just having more of a presence in our hallways, in our cafeterias, just so we have more adult presence throughout our schools. In addition, the Dean of Discipline, which will be at every middle school and high school, with the exception of our dedicated magnets, this individual will only focus on discipline issues. So they won't be doing curriculum, they won't be doing bus duty, they will focus on discipline. And I think often many of our discipline issues are reoccurring issues with certain kids. And so this dean is not someone who is your traditional punisher. Instead, this is a student advocate. This is someone who, when teachers are writing referrals, meet with students individually. And I think the best dean of discipline individual is someone who sees themselves as a guidance counselor, as a social worker, as a teacher, as a parent advocate. And this person will connect with kids to get to the root of why they're making the wrong decision. Kids are going to make the wrong decision. But the question becomes are we engaging them to reflect on why they did something wrong and what they're going to do differently? This person also will work with parents much more and have the space and time to do that. Assistant principals at middle schools and high schools will still focus on discipline, but this will allow them to free some of their time up to focus more on instructional issues and supporting teachers in the classroom instructionally and guiding the work of coaches. But we want our deans to be able to focus on discipline, and we're also creating an in-school suspension program, which is also a teacher, a fully certified teacher that will be in the in-school suspension room. This will be an opportunity for us to reduce outdoor suspensions because we don't want kids outside of school. When kids are outside of school, the statistics are clear. They're more likely to commit crimes, more likely to become truants. So we need to have clear consequence for our students. So when students are continually disruptive in the classroom, if they participate, let's say, in a fight in school, they will be given an in-school suspension where we will collect their work. They'll be in a separate room away from the regular learning environment, but they'll be there with a teacher that can help them do their work, but also work again with the student on problem-solving factors. Is why did you make that decision? What are we going to do differently? How are we going to deal with anger management issues and conflict resolutions? We're going to have our guidance counselors work with students while they're in the in-school suspension room. We have to have clear consequences for our students, but we also have to have the strategies in place and the personnel in place to turn the misbehavior of students and use that as a point of making a bad decision a better decision, or prevent that same bad decision from happening through a problem-solving process. we have a lot of work to do with being clear to teachers. What does the code of conduct say? What are the infractions and what are the consequences? But also with our children. They don't know the code of conduct. They don't know that if you do A, B will happen. So starting next year in the fall, we're thoroughly training our administrators, our teachers, and our students on the code of conduct, and the Parent Academy will reach out to parents to train them on the code of conduct as well. We must have consistency with the implementation of the code of conduct moving forward because it starts with the code of conduct.
Now, I know you're aware of this. Florida lawmakers recently passed legislation to, I guess, further define bullying to include cyberbullying.
Right.
Is bullying a major issue in this district?
I think it is. I think part of what I've been trying to do is being transparent, which based on what I think are our problems. And I think bullying is a problem. I think bullying is a problem nationally. I think the whole entire country is dealing with the issue of bullying, but it has become more pronounced because of email, because of texting, because of Facebook. And so this new statute will require us to delve more into what's happening through cyberspace. And that's going to put a burden on schools, but a lot of the bullying that we're seeing and then is linked to cyberspace. But what we're seeing is a lot of what's happening at the home through Facebook, through email, through texting, it then comes into the school. And so although the issue happens at the home or happens in the neighborhood, it's then actually playing itself out in the schools. So personnel, guidance counselors, that dean of discipline that I just talked about, assistant principals will have to start dealing with issues beyond the walls of the school. Additional burden, but we have to fulfill the law, and hopefully we can integrate it into our overall approach to limiting bullying, dealing with conflict resolution, and problem solving on issues before they escalate to the point of creating serious disciplinary issues.
And in the same vein of what you just mentioned right now, as far as that additional burden, the challenges, I mean, are there challenges when it comes to addressing those issues that do in fact happen off campus?
I do. I think that they do. We've always historically had scenarios. This isn't something that we're just dealing with in 2013. Meaning we've always had issues in the community that end up coming into the school. That's always been the issue in our school system. This goes back 10, even 20 years ago. But again, I think that a lot of the bullying that we're seeing actually is occurring in the community. It's happening at home or through cyberspace, and then it comes into our schools, and our parents want us to deal with the issue in the school setting, and we're limited. Now this new law will give us a bit more authority to deal with issues outside of the school, but at the end of the day, it's very hard to police and control, influence what students are doing outside of the home, and that's where the parents need to step in to be aware of how's texting being used, how's emails being used, Facebook, Twitter, etc. How is that being used, and is it being used in a positive way? The school system is limited with obviously what it can do after kids leave the school walls. I think we're solely responsible for behavior, conduct, bullying in the school. But there is a certain level of responsibility that we must see with our parents and our guardians when students go home. And oftentimes parents are frustrated because they want us to do more, but I think parents have to recognize there is a threshold, there is a jurisdiction, if you will, after students leave the classroom and the school.
We're not done yet. School Matters will be right back. Welcome back to this special edition of School Matters. We're asking Dr. Vitti your questions.
So you've been with the district since November. You just hit the ground running with town hall meetings, school visits, strategic plan. You met with the community on so many levels. So what did you get from all of those meetings about our district and also about the city?
Well, from all those meetings, I walked away feeling energized and supported to implement change, to transform this school district to be a better place for children. And so this is hard work. It's hard work. It's long hours. It's dealing with the resistance to change. It's dealing with the status quo. But every time I engage the community, and when I say community, I'm talking about parents, teachers, I'm talking about business partners, I'm talking about nonprofits, and all of these different entities believe so much in public education. And they want so much more from our school district so that we are engaging all kids at a high level. So as I went through that process earlier on, it gave me, in many ways, the fortitude, the courage to push through that resistance and that status quo. And so we've done a lot in a short amount of time, but I always go back to those conversations because it reminds me that there are people out there that you don't hear from every day that are encouraged by the change, that demand the change, and that we have to keep on moving forward. But while we do that, we have to continue to communicate with our stakeholders. And I think that is the challenge. The challenge is that you're moving forward with a sense of urgency because we have to get it right for kids. The old notion of you do the same things, you're going to get the same results. And so knowing that we need to move fast because we're talking about children's lives, at the same time, as we move fast, we have to make sure that we continue to engage and communicate with our parents and with our teachers and with our principals. Trying to do that, sometimes it's difficult because you're trying to balance change with communication. And I think as the years go, things will settle and that'll become a bit clearer and easier. And then I think also you develop trust so that when you're making changes, people recognize why you're doing it. And it alleviates a lot of the angst right now in the air, a lot of the confusion regarding the mismessaging. But I'm hopeful that come July, when the reorganization is done, things will start to settle going into next year.
And what are you proud of this year as far as accomplishments are concerned?
Well, a lot. I think we've done a lot in a short amount of time. I think some of our major accomplishments have been the securing of the QZAP grant of over $30 million to increase technology in our high poverty schools. Excited about the fact that we have developed an overage strategy for students that are 2 years or more out of their age cohort. We'll be expanding early childhood going into next year, our 4-year-old programs. We've dramatically upgraded, I think, the level of expertise when it comes to reading, math, and science at our district level, and that'll allow us to provide a profound new amount of support to our teachers. Excited about our new budget that is completely aligned to our strategic plan, which I'm very excited about. I think the strategic plan was one of the high points of my first couple months, in that it was a transparent and collaborative, engaging process where we truly listened to stakeholders and they gave feedback and gave input in the creation of that strategic plan. Very proud of that. I'm also proud, and I think most importantly, the results that came out from the release of FCAT scores. I know that I have purposely not emphasized FCAT, and I won't, but we know that our teachers, our schools, our principals, our children, and even myself are ultimately evaluated and judged on those scores. We certainly supported schools this year and teachers, but there was an opportunity for teachers to lose focus and principals because of the transition from one superintendent to another. But teachers do what they always do, which is they focused on their kids and they continue to work hard. And I'm proud of the results that we saw. I think we can do better. We'll do better. But considering all of the change, we did fairly well. And we're moving closer and closer to reaching that state average in reading and math and science.
Thank you for watching this special episode of School Matters. From all of us, have a great summer.